China emerged from the Second World War with Chiang Kai-shek's US-backed nationalists dominating Mao Zedong's communist forces in a civil war. But the Chinese Communist Party was highly embedded amongst the rural population, whereas Kai-shek relied on support from China's landlords and capitalists. Peasant anger against exploitative landlords, combined with the Communists' revolutionary leadership, built the People's Liberation Army into a formidable fighting force. Kai-shek's nationalists were forced out of the country in 1949's revolution, and Mao declared the establishment of the People's Republic of China. The United States refused to recognize the republic, instead backing Kai-shek's rival government in Taiwan. Although China had been liberated, Hong Kong remained a British possession. Chinese companies continued to make money from the region, and Britain maintained a neutral position on China for fear of losing their last major colony. In the early 1950s, China occupied the region of Tibet. Forced collectivization and religious persecution sparked ongoing resistance to Chinese rule, during which hundreds of thousands were killed. Tibet's Dalai Lama fled to India in 1959, setting up a government in exile. Tibet's struggle for liberation continued into the 21st century. China began a nuclear energy program in 1953 and developed nuclear weapons as Cold War competition compelled its rulers to rapidly develop its industrial and military strength. The so-called Great Leap Forwards from 1958 to 1961 actually set the country back a decade. High exploitation and industrial mismanagement brought about a slump in productivity and a deadly mass famine in 1961. As a result, Mao became marginalized in the Communist Party, but mounted a comeback, instigating the Cultural Revolution of 1966. From amongst idealistic youth, disaffected with the communist bureaucracy, Mao recruited his infamous Red Guards. They attacked Mao's political rivals, claiming to be purging pro-capitalist elements. The country descended into chaos, and the People's Liberation Army brutally suppressed dissent. Around 10% of the entire population were deported to the countryside. The Communist Party finally regained control in 1971, but by then Mao was ailing. A landmark meeting with US President Richard Nixon in the following year, and the subsequent recognition of the People's Republic by the United States, indicated the future development of China's economy. Mao's death in 1976 sparked another internal power struggle, and his supporters were purged from the party. Pro-free market leader Deng Xiaoping took control, and from 1978 he embraced the newly emerging neoliberal project, which had begun to take root internationally in the 1970s. By 1988, China had doubled its share of world trade, and foreign investment, virtually zero before 1979, reached nearly $35 billion in 1992. But rapid economic development didn't compensate for a complete lack of democracy in the one-party state. When student protests broke out in 1989, tens of thousands of workers joined them in their march to Tiananmen Square. The protest ended with government forces massacring over 1,000 civilians. In the early 1990s, China became the world's third biggest economy. Deng Xiaoping died in 1997, the same year that Hong Kong was handed back to China. The Asian financial crash of the following year saw millions of China's civil service workers sacked. The country's industrial growth was underpinned by an influx of rural workers to commercial centres. Workers were subjected to long hours, low wages, and working conditions which have been described as militaristic. In the 2000s, China took up a role as the new workshop of the world, with its economy increasingly reliant on exports to the more developed countries. As China's economy looked set to rival that of the United States, frequent workplace suicides, unrest, and a ban on coordinated strike action reflected China's focus on growth above human rights.